Thank you, Brian. Today we conclude a long, oft-interrupted series, Exploding the Myths That Make You Miserable. I invite you, if you have your Bibles, just one verse is a well-known verse, Romans 12, the second verse. Paul writes these words, "Do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what is God's will, his good, pleasing, and perfect will." Talking about change, there's all kind of how many people does it take to change a light bulb jokes out there. And since we're a church, I want to share some religious ones. How many does it take to change a light bulb? How many, if you're charismatic, it only takes one. Your hands are already up in the air. If you're a Mormon, it takes 5. 1 husband to change the light bulb, 4 women to tell them how to do it. If you're a fundamentalist, none. There's nothing about light bulbs in the Bible. If you're a TV evangelist, 1 to do it, 2 to give praise to God, and 30 to ask you to send in money because they might run out by the end of the week. And if you're a Baptist, change, who said anything about change? But it's no joke that in our day and time, everybody expects everything to happen just like that. We live in this microwave society of ours, and so we think that somehow change is going to work that way as well. So then we bump up against that myth that in fact can make us miserable. I ought to be able to change overnight. Here's the obvious truth. You didn't get the way you are overnight, you're not going to change the way you are overnight. Change, when you think about it, it's a process. It involves loss, which is why, in its truest sense, change can always be threatening, which is why we have such a hard time with it. I think of that derelict on the corner of Wall Street in New York. He's begging for money, so a corporate executive goes by. He reaches out and says, "Change, change." And the executive, tired as all get out, says, I'm trying. Aren't we all? Aren't we all trying to change very quickly? My guess is if I say what needs changing in your life, you can just like that start getting in touch. Everybody's name is on the envelope this morning. And so I want to talk about the truth with change. The truth will make you free, the Bible says. It's true for all of us. 3 different truths about change. First of all, you will change when there's finally enough hurt in your life to make you change. Proverbs 20:30, a good paraphrase of it reads, "Sometimes it takes a painful experience to make us change our ways." In my work, I listen to people all the time. And time and again, I just want to say, how did you let it get this far? Why didn't you do something when the warning signals were there so much earlier? And the reason we don't do it is because there's still just not enough pain. We're still holding on, still hoping we can make it by with what we're doing. And there's not enough pain yet to force us to try something different. Maybe this morning your life is out of balance. Maybe your marriage is drying up by the day. Maybe the creditors are knocking on your door. Maybe you're just at that stress point that's just almost a tipping point now. And you know that there needs to be some change, but for all that, you still don't have enough pain to get you to finally go over and do something about it. Let me let you in on a secret. Those words, that feeling, I can't keep on like this. Something needs to change. This isn't working for me anymore. However it is that you say it, those very feelings, I think, are something of God maybe stirring something up in you. Because always remember this. God, if he is a God of anything, he is a God of change. He sent his son to change us, to convert us, to, as we said in baptism, become a new creation. God is a God of change. Deuteronomy 32:11 says, God is like an eagle that stirs up its nest. You know what a mother eagle does when the baby eagle finally gets big enough and ready to fly? It literally starts moving pieces away from the nest. If the little baby eagle doesn't get the message by that, then the day comes when the mother eagle, with that tough love, kicks the eagle out of the nest. It forces the eagle to fly so that finally the eagle can soar and be what an eagle was meant to be. Some of you know some push in your life right now, I bet. Some pinch, perhaps. Something is just pushing you, kind of getting you in some uncomfortable place that you know you can't go back to where you are. I would suggest don't discount that. Maybe see it again as the stirring of God. Because here's the deal, folks. God does love you as you are. Thank goodness. God never ever wants to leave you where you are. God is always expecting us, whether you're 2 years old or 102, to be growing, to be changing. The trouble with most of us is that we like our comfortable nest, don't we? Even as much as sometimes we know it's really not the best, we at least know how it works. We know how to get by. It's become our way of flying, if you will. And so we just hang on to that for all the discomfort and wrongness about it if we can. How is it this morning that I knew coming in here where at least about 95% of you all would be sitting this morning? I know where your pew is. We don't like change, do we? The doxology, some of you like today's doxology because you never liked it when this church changed it years ago. Oh, you've told me. I've heard about it. Trust me. And some of you didn't like the doxology today because it was different than what we've been doing all these other weeks. Change is just not our thing. We love our comfortableness. And so if we can maybe name the enemy, sometimes that helps. And we can just claim and be willing to acknowledge and say, yes, change is threatening. Change means loss. And for many of us, when everything in the world is changing, can't we just have something we can depend on anymore? And that's why God is always wanting churches to change. But it's hard sometimes because we go out in a world where everything is nuts these days. And we just say, can't we just keep church the same? Everything else is so upsetting. Don't change it here. We need at least one anchor. And that's why while the church should always be changing, one thing that doesn't change is the eternal word, the good news of the gospel in Jesus Christ. You know, nature offers, I think, an interesting picture here. I'm told that clams, clam strips, that when they are caught and taken out of the ocean and taken across the country to a restaurant, that they continue right along on their regular tidal schedule until they are finally put in hot water. Now, if that's not a parable of people, I don't know what is. Most of us, we are not going to change until we get put into hot water, until there's finally enough pain to finally say, the pain of staying the way I am is in fact now even greater than the risk of now changing. Maybe it takes some word from your doctor. Maybe it's a crisis in your marriage or your job. Maybe it's some truth that finally you can't discount any longer. Paul in Romans, I think, speaks for many of us when he said, I've tried everything and nothing helps. I'm at the end of my rope. Is there no one who can do anything for me? I hear people say that kind of thing in your own language all the time. And again, I think that kind of feeling, is anything can change? Can anything be different? Can anybody help me here? Is a sign of God wanting to do something in your life. So there you have it, the first thing. I think it's so true so often that you will change when finally there's enough hurt and enough pain that you almost have to change. But second of all, you will change when you learn enough that you want to change. If I were to ask you, if your spouse, your best friend were to ask you, do you want to change some things in your life? That's the most obvious question. Again, 99.5, yes, absolutely. I want to change some things. But why is it then that change never seems to come? Romans 12:2 that I read earlier, a paraphrase of it says, be changed within by a new way of thinking. In other words, sometimes it helps to understand what it is that's keeping you from changing. Our theme verse, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. And here's the truth, folks. So often for many of us, the problems in our life are not the real problem. The problem is more, how are we viewing those problems? And how are we dealing with those problems? You see, you can't change without first changing the way you think. And right here, I want to say something so simple, so basic, so obvious, that I know I will offend every one of you. If you want to change, you got to do something different. Now, aren't you glad you came this morning? That was earth-shattering. But really, if you want to change, you got to do something. You just got to do something. You can't just think about it and all of that. You know, Alcoholics Anonymous has that well-known saying, crazy is doing the same thing over and over again and thinking that you will get different results. That's crazy. If you're going to change, you got to do something differently. At this point, even knowing the truth isn't enough. James is well known for saying, faith, if not accompanied by action, is dead. So tomorrow, this week, here's your homework. Do something. In your marriage, go out on a date. Act like you like each other. Yeah, see how that works for you. In your job, maybe just instead of take a job and shove it, just say one day I'm going to take this job and love it. And I'm going to ask my supervisor, what can I do to help around here? And I'm going to be productive instead of complaining. Or maybe whatever it may be for you. Those old habits, maybe it's the credit card, you just put it in the drawer for a week. I don't know what it is for you. But doing the same thing you've always done simply isn't going to change anything, to state the very obvious. Parker Palmer talks about in one of his books about how that time in his life he felt like he was swallowed up in a cave of depression and wonder if he would ever be able to escape. And so he rolled the program called Outward Bound. You've heard of that. About the middle of the week, they instructed all the participants to rappel down a steep cliff. He got about halfway down that cliff and just froze. The instructor encouraged how to do it, couldn't move at all. And finally, one of the other instructors said, it's time you learn the motto for Outward Bound. And Parker Palmer thinks, I'm about to die here, and they're giving me a motto. But the other instructor says something. He said he hoped he would never forget the rest of his life. Said, if you can't get out of it, get into it. If you can't get out of it, get into it. Friends, this is your life. As Lewis Grisner used to always say, this ain't no dress rehearsal. This is the only life that you get. No helicopter is going to come along and whisk you away. No genie is going to come out of a bottle and do magical things. No self-help book is going to change you. No magic eraser is going to take care of all the mistakes. This is your life. You can't get out of it. So go ahead and try getting into it. Just take one step this week towards trusting God for something that you know and God knows needs to just start getting a little change of direction. Maybe it's a phone call to somebody you haven't talked to in too long. Maybe it's a note to somebody that there's been that wall for so long. You say, we need to forgive each other and get back together. Maybe you need to write up a resume and just send it out to see how it goes. Or maybe take a class to learn some new skill. Maybe you need to have a talk with your children or with your spouse. But here's the truth. One small step of action produces more than 100 internal pep talks. Stop talking about change. Start doing something that's change. And you will change when you learn enough you want to change. And here's the most obvious statement. The most non-productive thing you can do is to do nothing. And so this week, do something. And finally, last of all, you will change when you receive enough that you are able to change. You see, everything in this world, I think it just conspires against change. And for us to go out there because of that and act like we can somehow do it on our own is a false idol. It's a myth again. I can't do it on my own. Lawrence Taylor, some of you know, is all-pro linebacker for years for the New York Giants. Played right here at UNC Chapel Hill, All-American. He was excluded and banned from the NFL for a while because he abused the substance policy. And so out of that, he was quoted in the New York Times back when that happened. He said, "God, I didn't mean for it to happen. I wish it hadn't, but I made a bad decision, and I'll have to pay for it. I really wasn't allowing the Giants to help me. I wasn't allowing my wife to help me. I was doing it by myself because I wanted to say that I could do it on my own. It doesn't work that way. Boy, I found that out. I can do it on my own." Talk about a myth that will make you miserable. Friends, you can't do it on your own, and that's why God gave you this church. And that's why God gave you a Savior. I could go on all day about the difference, and I could share testimonies from all over this room of the difference it makes to have a church family that prays for you and encourages you and strengthens you. How often have I heard the statement, "I don't know what I would have done without my church family." And of course, nobody changes the way Jesus Christ has the power to change. As the old saying goes, people get altered at the altar. And there we discover that he is more than sufficient for all that we are less than sufficient for. So when I hear someone say, "I can't help myself," I'm thinking two things. Either that's the lamest excuse possible, or they are saying the truest truth ever expressed. You can't help yourself, so stop trying. The psalmist cried out, "The Lord is the strength of my life." And you can change when you receive enough that you are able to change. You see, I don't know any exercise program. I don't know any self-help book. I don't know any magical genie. I've been looking for one. I don't know any motivational tape that is able to say in all honesty, I can take that which is dead and bring it to life. But Jesus said that, and Jesus did it. And so we've been going through this series, myths that make us miserable. And a verse that reminds us there is something that's no longer a myth at all. It is the truth. And Jesus says, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." And I just want to say, I know this sounds like an old August hot tent revival preacher, but there are people in this room who really do want to change. But you haven't let Christ have a chance with you. This is what Christ's specialty is. He's in the changing business. He's in the healing business. He's in the hoping business. But we got to let Christ have a place with us. And some of us, we've never open a crack in the door. We're here every Sunday, but to really let Christ have a chance, we're just not doing it. And that's the first step. To give your life to Christ. Our hymn this morning is "Have Thine Own Way, Lord. have thine own way. It's a bold hymn when you think about it, but it's a reminder that he is the potter, we are the clay when we are at our very best. There may be some who wish this morning to make a profession of faith. We had a wonderful couple join in the early service today, and maybe you want to make a commitment to be a part of this church, join from another church family, or some renewed commitment. I'll be at the front to receive you. Let us stand this scene to the glory of God, hymn number 294.